Yesterday, we began learning together Rav Soloveitchik's essay, The Inner Transformation on Pesach night. At the beginning of that essay, the Rav describes how any miracle, whether hidden or revealed, requires a response from us. And this is in keeping with the Rav's approach that whenever we witness an action or an event in the world, it calls us to respond to it, not to speculate about why it occurred, but to ask what it demands of us. This is true both of revealed miracles, in which we are called to respond with our physical actions, as well as hidden miracles, where our response to is more of an internal one. In particular, during Yetziat Mitzrayim, the Rav writes that God displayed two attributes that we're called on to respond to. When God took us out from Egypt, he displayed the attribute of Havdalah, of separation, and Gvura, courage. He displayed the attribute of Havdalah when he distinguished us from our oppressors. And he displayed the attribute of Gvura when he punished the Egyptians. The Jewish people were immediately called upon to display the attribute of Havdalah when God gave us the Torah at Har Sinai. God warned Moshe twice to tell the Jewish people to stand back from Har Sinai and not to go forward. Why, the Rav asks, did God have to give this instruction to Moshe twice? He writes that the answer is simple. There is a difference between the boundary that holds back a human, a rational being, and the boundary that holds back an animal. For an animal, one must build a fence, a simple partition that can physically prevent it from walking into another person's field. A simple marker or sign will not help. But a person needs neither partitions nor fences. It is enough to warn him that the territory does not belong to him. His boundary is an abstraction, an intangible separation. Apparently, at Har Sinai, God did not want the people to refrain from ascending the mountain because a physical barrier blocked them. No physical barrier was constructed between the Jewish people and the mountain. The only thing that held us back was Moshe's warning. And this was a way of elevating us, the Rav explains, from the condition of slavery. Part of what is dehumanizing about slavery is that people in some way are transformed into animals. They're given instructions, they're beaten when those instructions aren't followed. They lose their sense of dignity and purpose. He says that the most amazing thing about the Exodus, far greater than the signs and wonders, is the transformation of a nation of slaves who lived in a boundless state, who preferred a dissolute life, who did not understand the meaning of laws and strictures, of obeying laws when no taskmaster threatens you. As slaves, they only understood one thing. You must obey the taskmaster, because if you do not, he will beat you with his baton. That is part of what is dehumanizing about slavery. That is why it is so difficult to overcome oppression. Your perspective becomes shortened. You don't gaze into the distance. It's challenging to keep a sense of higher dignity and purpose beyond simply getting through the day or executing the tasks you are assigned without being punished or beaten. But to be a free people means that you can't simply live in fear of being punished and do things simply because you know you will not be punished if you do them. Instead, you have to live with a higher purpose, for a higher reason. At that moment when the Jewish people didn't encroach on that boundary, the Rav writes, they understood what it means to possess spiritual ideals, what it means to enter into a covenant with the Almighty. Suddenly they stood hedged with roses. No one threatened them with batons. No taskmasters ran shouting at them. They could have trampled everything, the roses and the glorious flower bed, but suddenly they beheld the power and the beauty of the roses, and they guarded the flowers. This transformation was a hidden miracle of great import. The Jews were able to distinguish between sacred and profane. Now, as I read this, it caused me to reflect a bit on the condition that we all find ourselves in today, that of being told to stay in place, to socially distance. These also are restraints that are being given to us. But they are really restraints that in some ways it would be impossible for the government to enforce. Most of us, all of us, I hope, are following these restraints not because we fear punishment or even because we're worried about getting sick, but instead because of a higher purpose we now feel bound to, of a sense that with our actions, we can protect our loved ones, our neighbors, and our fellow citizens. And that alone, that sense of a higher purpose, is enough to keep us within the boundaries that have been laid out before us. And in that sense, it reflects the essence of what it means for us to be a free nation. We'll pick up again tomorrow.